the convenience of the honeymoon period. We're addicted to that. The moment the honeymoon period is over and we start seeing the whole version of that person and the real version of that person, well, can we love all of that person? Because unconsciously they're feeling, you love me when I put my best foot forward, but what about when I get upset or angry or when I get messy? You can't hold that. It's convenient to let the relationship go. It's convenient to divorce. It's convenient to separate. It's convenient to start over with someone new and pretend none of that ever happened. But guess what? You fucking bring yourself wherever you go. And that's the truth. So unless we change who we are, we're going to bring that old version into a new relationship. End of story.
Hi guys, it's Mike. Welcome back to the Best Medicine Podcast. Today's show was a fascinating talk with relationship expert and behavioral scientist Stefanos Sifandos. Yes, that's his real name. It's straight out of a Greek mythology book, and I hope I pronounced it right, Stefanos. My apologies if not, man. With over 15 years of experience in the space, Stefanos has worked closely with thousands of people all over the world, including elite special forces soldiers, Olympic gold medalists, couples wanting to deepen or heal their relationship, and individuals with mental health issues. Now let's be honest, your relationships, both personal and professional, completely shape your quality of life. That's why today's discussion about mindset shifts, the power of empathy, healing childhood trauma, and so many more topics is so important. As always, please follow us and let us know what you think at The Best Medicine Podcast on IG and on TikTok at The Best Med Pod. And we are blowing up on TikTok. I appreciate the support so much. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure why. I think I'm way too old for the platform. I just don't get it. But it's really cool to see. I'm so grateful. And it helps us make an even better show with your feedback. So I hope you enjoy the show. Stefanos, thank you for joining us. We are excited. This is the first batch of our brother-sister show here. We're calling it The Best Medicine, by the way. And so we're having health and wellness experts, athletes, entrepreneurs, people in personal development. And one of the things right away as I was driving here that I wanted to talk to you about, because I don't know much of your backstory, you're a relationship expert. Today, more than ever, I want to talk about mental health, relationships. Our entire lives are relationships, both romantic and business. And so I'm excited to speak with you, but I'm curious of how you got to kind of where you were today and how you got to the point where now your life mission and your purpose is helping other people in their relationships. So I'm kind of curious how you get to that spot in life.
I think we either get to, so wherever we are, wherever we find ourselves in life or what we create for ourselves in life, we get there from one of two places. We're either deeply inspired by something that stems from a very deep curiosity, and that curiosity lives in an environment of safety. Or we arrive at a place in our lives from a place of void or fear or pain, right? And so for me, it was the latter. So what that looked like was being at home, being in a volatile environment, growing up in physical violence and emotional abuse, growing up in volatility, not really knowing what would the day hold for me, living in fear as a little kid from my parents, watching them argue, watching them fight, watching them, abuse each other in different ways, and then that being passed down to meaning myself and my brother. And I felt very isolated and alone. And so the space that I find myself in now, which is the transformation space and the personal development, the personal growth space, growth and expansion, right? I wanted to expand out of my circumstances and I didn't know how. I felt very stuck. And again, I felt stuck, isolated, scared. And as a result of that, I cultivated certain ways of thinking and believing certain things about life. Like, can people be trusted? Are people safe? What's my worth and value? Because if I'm being beaten by the person or the people that are meant to love me and care for me, how can I trust anyone? Right. And so, I lent into watching a lot of TV. I lent into eating as a kid. And as I grew up, that changed a little bit, but I lent into more adrenaline and status-seeking activities. I lent into sex and really became addicted to sex, addicted to the peak experiences, right? Addicted to being validated by things, people, experiences outside of myself. I didn't have that as a kid. And I didn't know any of that. This is all upon now me looking back at my life and having done deep inner exploration and continue to do so, that allows me to gain greater context into my life. And there's some of the reasons why I am where I am today.
Wow. It's interesting. We've had a common thread with a lot of different people from all walks of life that end up creating something beautiful out of trauma, out of that pain, right? So, and one of the things I saw on your Instagram earlier too was like, we started laughing because it was like, why do I suck at relationships?
Mike and I watched that video together, and I was like,
She's
that's you, Mike.
That was me. Romantic relationship.
Well, wait, I won't just throw you under the bus. It is very funny when you've been in a few serious relationships and you notice, you're like, oh, I'm the variable. The pattern is repeating.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm the
damn it.
common denominator.
Yeah, it's like,
wow.
Wait, the same thing's happening again? Oh, it's me.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, you know what? Let's just turn the show into a private therapy session of why I suck at relationships.
You don't suck. We grew up with, gosh, I've shared a lot with you. You've already been so helpful to me. Our parents divorced 10 years ago, so we never saw our parents in love. I don't even know if I ever saw my parents go on a date or anything. So Mike and I did not grow up with seeing a healthy, loving relationship. And I think whether we want to believe that or not, it affects how we see romance and a healthy partnership, right? And a healthy household. Because now I see that it's so important for that to be strong. I mean, you're a dad now. I think you've seen these quotes around put your significant other than your kid, and people get really mad. And it's like, no, the reason they're saying that is so then you can make that strong, right? And we didn't see that. We saw our mom be super selfless and be an awesome mom, but our parents were not strong.
Are you seeing that a lot with just society in general, especially the people that you're working with, that they're just repeating the patterns that they saw when they were, younger?
Yeah, we are destined to repeat the patterns that we grow up with and what we're exposed to until we deliberately, actively choose to be generational pattern breakers. That's the reality of it. We will run on repeat, and we will do, our bodies and brains and our minds will do what is most efficient, most effective, and gives us the most pleasure, or rather brings us further away from pain. And so all the coping strategies that we create unknowingly to ourselves along our journey is all about, can I minimize this pain? I don't want to address it. I can't look at it. It's too big. Let me do all the things that move me away from that. Alcohol, drugs, food, sex, TV, status-seeking activities, as I mentioned before, adrenaline-seeking activities, distractions, just any distraction, right? And they become patterns and habits. And when they become habits, they become entrenched, they become part of our identity. When we perceive something to be part of our identity, we struggle to let that thing go. That's why I didn't want to stop having sex with lots of different women, or stop cheating, or that's why I kept succeeding and failing, because it was a pattern that I was addicted to. Remember I mentioned volatility growing up? That was the pattern. I wanted that familiarity because it wasn't safe. I didn't like it. I didn't want it, but it was known to me.
It was familiar.
And my nervous system says, well, I just want what's familiar. The flip side of that is we'll keep repeating those very similar circumstances in order to have a redo, in order to be differently with it, in order to close that trauma loop, right? But the issue is that we're not consciously aware of that. So you mentioned relationships earlier. We'll keep attracting the same kind of relationships to do it differently, but we don't know we're doing that. That's the issue. And so that's where the inner exploration, that's where we've got to step back and say, maybe I need to look at myself here for a moment. I'm the common denominator in my life. Let me look at the places where I'm showing up in these patterns that aren't really serving me. And it's not what I want. I'm saying I want something, but my life is showing something different.
You're letting the subconscious kind of rule you, aren't you? I mean, so as I sit here right away, I'm kind of like, there's so many people like that, myself included, to where I always prioritize things, I guess, that were my identity, my career as an athlete, or how much money I made before relationships. Because like Angie said, that's what we were taught, either outwardly or subconsciously, right? But what do you say to, what's the first step to kind of break that cycle, and how can you start to break that cycle? Because it's so fucking ingrained in you and in your DNA, right? So how have you helped people kind of start that journey? And if you're listening, you're like, okay, what do I do to start to break that cycle that you mentioned?
Yeah, it does really begin with self. I really want to, and that's a common question asked, like, well, how? How do we, or how do we break that, or how do we create this that's something new? How do we get away from that and move into something, a new version of ourselves? It has to begin with us. And I say that from a place of love and compassion and a little bit of sternness as well. Like if you are unwilling to take responsibility, maybe responsibility is not the right word, but if you're unwilling to empower yourself, right? To say, I'm at the center of this. That's not you blaming or judging yourself because that's not going to be useful at all. That's, in fact, that's going to lead you down a path that is going to pull you away from any form of transformation that is impactful or positive. If you can say, I'm at the center of this, that empowers you to make change. Now, what we're doing is we're not saying, you know what, Angie, it's your fault. It's your fault that, or you know what, mum and dad, it's your fault that I'm like this. Well, that's great that it's their fault, but they can't change your life for you. You live with yourself 24/7. So when we empower ourselves to say, let me look at my life and let me look at where I could be better, different, I could excel in another way, I could behave in different ways. Now, here's the beauty of it. We're relational beings, right? We're not strangers. We don't live in silos, although many of us do though, unfortunately. Many of us do that. We,
especially now.
Yeah, and internally as well. Like we isolate ourselves. We're scared to be close to people. We like to do it by ourselves. We think that we're weak if we ask for help. But the reality is we're relational beings. One of the ways that we've been able to evolve in complex ways socially is because we've relied on each other in very complex social systems. So seek support. You know, join a men's group or a women's group or a co-ed group. Work with a therapist, a counselor, a coach. Ask your friends to give you feedback into who you are. Be careful with friends and family, though, of course. I don't mean that facetiously, just because they're personally invested. And so friends and family don't necessarily want us to change because we said that unfamiliarity is scary. And so if you start changing, people around you are going to go, whoa, who the fuck are you now? No, we don't, you don't change. Go back to how you were. Come on, let's, smoke crack on the weekend or whatever we're doing, right? Like, they don't want you to change. So, because then their identity is threatened because all the fixtures in their lives start changing and then it rocks people's world. So I think 2 steps is one, assume personal autonomy to empower yourself to look at where you can change in your life and look at the patterns, observe the patterns. And number 2, seek some support. Like simple things that you can do immediately is that right there. Yes, you can look at habit creation. You can look at where are my habits unhealthy, right? But sometimes we won't be that honest with ourselves. That's why we need other people that see us, that love us, that respect us, that are safe spaces to say, hey, I love you. And you smoking 30 cigarettes a day is actually not really good for you. And you may want to change that. You can keep doing it. I still love you, but you may want to change it because you're saying you want all these health and fitness goals, yet you're doing A, B, and C. So we may not be that honest with ourselves because we're not used to being that honest with ourselves and we don't want to change. The mind is very tricksy. So that's why when we surround ourselves with people that respect us, that we respect, and that can see us, they can challenge us and equally support us as well.
Holy shit.
Have you seen people, let me ask it this way. What is the change that you've seen since COVID started, since the pandemic? Obviously,
in people in general?
In people in general, and especially the people that you kind of work with, right? Have you seen a change in like the mental state of people or how you've been doing this work a long time? So
22 years.
So how do you, there it is. So how is the last 2.5 years differed from the last 20?
Yeah, I've seen I would want to say 2 different paths emerge or 2 different kinds of people emerge. And then obviously everything in between on that spectrum. And I'm sure there are some things on the outskirts, right? But if I was to look at quasi extremes, I've seen people that have gone into deep fear, really, really deep fear, right? And they're the people that have been shocked by what has transpired the last couple of years. And as a result of that, they have said, someone tell me, save me, tell me what to do, tell me how to do it. What's the solution? Yep, you got that, give it to me, whatever it is, just give it to me. Just, I don't want this thing that's going around or whatever it is, right? And you've got the other people that are saying, fuck you, I want my freedom, you can't tell me what to do, what are you scared of? The interesting thing is, those people are equally as scared. They're just scared for different reasons.
Yeah.
And they're maybe not scared to get sick, but they're scared to lose or not have access to certain experiences, or their values are being compromised.
Losing freedom, yeah.
So if I was to then bring it into a singular thing, and I'm very much reducing and simplifying here, right? But bringing it into a single thing, I'm seeing fear. seeing fear. And I had to check myself for that as well. So I wasn't so much in the first camp. I was more in the second camp saying, fuck you to government and fuck you to corporations and fuck you to what was really happening in the world, right? It didn't align with me. I just thought something's not right here. Like we're overreacting. We're being reactive as a collective. Like let's just pause and slow down. But before I got to a more, I guess, stable point within myself, I was very angry. I felt very threatened. I was becoming very aggressive. I mean, I was very judgmental of people that weren't thinking like me. And so, I mean, I have to take ownership of that if I want to change it, because that's not going to, like I said earlier, like being judgmental is not going to help. Judging others and judging myself is not going to help. And living with that is not going to be useful for me to elicit any form of meaningful change or to even live the life that I want to live, a life of maybe reprieve and being content, like actually just being grounded and being content, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of fear. And look, I think it's settled, but I don't think it's settled. I think it's been swept under the carpet.
Yeah.
I'm still wearing a mask right now while I'm recording.
You need to be.
I need to be. You're too close. It's almost 2023. I'm still wearing one. No, I agree. I mean, you said it beautifully. If I had to swallow my pride a little bit, it's like if I was pissed, the word I want to use for 2020 to 2022 is anger for me, which now my liver is like, let's get rid of the anger. It's chill now. I'm like almost coming down from anger. I want to punch a wall sometimes, but I think that let's be honest. If I was, what's behind anger? Fear, right? Why does a dog bite? It's afraid. So I was afraid. I was afraid of my freedom being taken away, just as much as a woman wearing 6 masks is afraid of being sick. So we're all the same. We're more the same than we think we are as humans, right?
Oh, that's so true.
We're all the same at the end of the day. We're all just fucking afraid of something. We're all in fear.
We demonize difference.
I love that way you explained it. It's really beautiful because it reminds me to not be so judgmental and to really work on that, because that's something I need to work on, is not judging every Judy down the street.
Yeah. No, I think you're pretty
Mike,
good.
you're good at that. Mike's better at being compassionate sometimes.
I have a lot of empathy, which I always say is ironic because I used to punch people in the face for a living. But
I do too, but I also have more fear, empathy, and pissed off too.
But I think I'm curious actually if you've worked with a lot of people that have very high levels of empathy. It can be a superpower in a sense, but it also can be a crutch. It's also hurt me in a lot of scenarios to where I should have broke something off or should have let someone go in the company, and I found I need to battle with that. But have you seen a lot of that in some of your work, specifically around empathy?
Big time, man. So you're right. Most superpowers, you name whatever superpower you want, it's also a crux at some level. Or it can be a crux, right? And so empathy, or being a highly sensitive person, it's a very real thing. I can't remember that lady that wrote that book.
Oh, the HSP book, right?
Yes.
Highly sensitive people. Who is that?
It may come to me. It may come to me.
That's the title of the book, Highly Sensitive People.
Yes, or how to be with an empath or something like that. But I forget titles and authors sometimes. However, she shares some research in one of her books, which really states that it's a very real thing in terms of a strong percentage of, like, I think 15 to 20% of the population has this propensity to be deeply empathetic, right? And as a result of that, people are sensitive. They're sensitive to the environment. They're sensitive to energy, to emotions, to people's responses. Now, as a result of that, what many people do is they do generally, I'm simplifying things here, but this is so much more complex than this, but generally one of two things. They either retract because the world's too much for them. So you'll find people that stay at home a lot. They're more introverted. They struggle to be in intimate relationships. So they carry a fear of intimacy. They don't want to be hurt. They don't want to feel other people's big feelings. They don't know how to cope with that. They may people please so that people just stay stable with them and they're not too high or too low. Or people, and this usually is in men, when they're very sensitive or when they're empathetic and they feel other people, they get very aggressive to A, mask that, and B, protect themselves. That's me. I'm a sensitive person. I'm an empath. I have been from a very little boy. It was beaten out of me physically and metaphorically. And then as a teenager and as an adult, I beat it out of myself by the way I behave. Like I changed but it was always there. And so one of the ways I dealt with it was by being aggressive and defensive. and being, hyper or attempting to be hyper intelligent, right? To mask people, to mask what I was truly feeling and keep people at a distance because I couldn't trust people as well. So when we're talking about highly sensitive people, when we're talking about empaths, there are many other patterns at play that feed into that determine sort of how you work with that empathy within yourself. But ultimately, when we develop a sense of deeper confidence within ourselves and self-worth, we surround ourselves with healthy people. We do our inner work. We attune and attend to our own nervous systems, and we are, we prioritize the nervous systems of others that we care for. In other words, we understand their pain, their difficulties, their challenges, their traumas. We can choose more openly, more wholly, more deliberately how to interact with people. We can set healthy boundaries. We can say, hey, the way you're behaving right now, it's reminding me of this and it's a little overwhelming for me. I'm just going to take a step back. It's that kind of dialogue. Or, hey, that behavior is not appropriate. Can we find another way to communicate to each other? So, but to get to that point, I'm just going to sort of come back full circle. Like that inner work is really, really important.
It is hard. It's almost like what are they? I've heard it's listening without taking it on. So if you're watching a movie and makes you emotional, or someone's telling you their pain, like if I was telling you right now how much pain I'm in, Mike is it's really beautiful. He's very sensitive. He could start crying if someone shares a story about how they're hurt or something, and it's almost like, can you listen without taking it in? Right? It's like I'm hearing it, but I'm not absorbing it. That's hard though in conversations, right? It's
Yeah.
like you want to take on their pain for a moment and say, "Oh, well, I'll take it on for you," but it's like you almost have to have a energetic boundary there.
Are your parents still alive?
They are. Yep.
Are they in
Do you
Australia?
ever
No, they're in Greece.
Oh, in Greece.
do you have a
Cool.
relationship with them?
Yes. Yeah.
Have you spoken to them about your childhood, or have you
100%.
forgiven them? Okay. Do you think
Both.
that was an important part to open that up, or scratch that scab maybe, or that wound, and for yourself and maybe for them? Because I guarantee there's so many people listening that have had issues with their parents, and it's like, well, what do I do? Do I just kind of ignore it and move on? Or I'm curious for you particularly what worked for you and what didn't.
Ignoring it won't actually have us move on. It's a nice saying that ignore it and move on, but it doesn't really happen that way. It's a faux moving on. FAUX. Faux. It's a pretend moving on. I'll give you an example of one of the many conversations I've had with my father. So when I addressed some of the issues, so firstly, I addressed my past or our past with my father when I was in a place of no matter what he says or how he responds, I'm still going to be okay. And I'm still going to love him for how he is. I'm not going to get triggered or activated by whatever he says. So one example is, I can genuinely laugh when I say this, because I can imagine, I can visualize him just sitting here. We were sitting like this, and I'm like, oh, Baba. Baba is the Greek word for dad. And I said, I love you. I love you. Anyway, what I said to him was, do you remember all the things that happened when we grew up? Do you remember how your mum used to hit me? Do you remember how, and I didn't say it in a shaming, judgmental way. I'm going to be very careful around that. Do you remember how, you went around and you gambled a lot and all these things, right? And then you'd wake up in the morning, you'd be so angry, and sometimes whatever. I went through it. And he said to me, I don't remember any of that. I was a really good father and I was always there. And
Wow.
I believe that he believed that.
Oh
It
God.
was very convenient for him to believe that, right? And so, but when we had that conversation a number of years ago, I just looked at him, I laughed, as I said, and I just said, I love you, Baba. It's all good. It's all good. And I just realized in that moment, there's really no point in, we say in Australia, flogging a dead horse, right? There's just, the horse is dead. There's no point. And so, but let me get very real for a moment in terms of grief and parents. So there's two deaths that we need to mourn of our parents. And Christine, my wife, says this often as well. It's their physical death, and it's their physical passing, but it's the death of who they never were, who they weren't able to be for you as a parent, right? And that's the deepest mourning, and that often needs to take place if you want a relationship with your parents, or if you at least want a freedom and a contentment and a peace within yourself where you're not plagued by judgment and fear and anger and projection. You want to be doing that whilst they're alive, or just as early as you can, right? And that's a process that takes time. And so, and with my mum, it's a little different. With my mum, she's more open. She's very understanding, very I guess clear is the right word. Even though she was moving through a lot of physical illness, which affected her memory, she does remember, and she has apologized and taken ownership of her part and all the things. And that's been very beautiful as well. And to be completely transparent and completely open, yes, I have forgiven my parents. Yes, we have a relationship. Yes, I love them. Yes, I care for them. Yes, I miss them. And more towards my mum, actually, I still have judgments towards my mother. Like I'm still working through judgments. And I was the closest growing up with my mum. We were enmeshed. You guys know what emotional
Enmeshment.
emotional enmeshment and entanglement is when a parent, usually, not always, but usually a mother and usually a son, but can definitely be a daughter as well. She projects, or that parent rather projects their emotional needs onto the child that they're not getting from their partners, from their husbands, from their wives, or whatnot, right?
Like give a specific, like if she's not getting attention from her husband, she's gonna try to get
She's
it from
going to
her.
pull attention from her child. She's going to want to make sure that her child sees her as something that is magnificent because she's not feeling validated by her partner. And this is an unconscious thing. It's not like they wake up in the morning and think about this. It's very unconscious. And so I was very close to my mum, healthily and unhealthily, right? But I still hold judgments. And as I do, as I'm becoming a parent now, sorry, I'm a parent now. And as my daughter is growing, I'm moving through layers of stuff I've already worked through. But there's layers to that stuff because now I have new experiences that are very potent and poignant that are coming into my life, i.e. having a child. It's a big, big thing. It's the biggest, for me, it's the biggest thing that I've ever done and probably will ever do. And I am very mission driven in the world. I'm very connected to my passion and service and dharma and all of that. And I mean, that baby girl is my, like, I can't even speak, I just,
cry.
yeah, well, she's opened up my heart so much where, again, to be completely honest, because I practice what I preach. I do my best to, like, one of my core wounds is a fear of intimacy. So letting people in has been, difficult for me. I do a really good job of letting people in. I think people that meet me say, you're really open, Steph. I mean, I think they would say that. I've had feedback. And I know me, I'm still little bits in there that are closed, right? And this little baby girl is opening that up. And as she opens that up, or as her presence opens that up within me, and I choose to be open to that, I also open myself up to layers of deeper healing and expansion within my relationship to Christine. It hasn't always been, the last 6 months haven't necessarily been the easiest because, as they say, the first year of having your first child, like the vast majority of people get divorced and separate. And that's not our path, but I can understand why. It's a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of tension. As a competitive athlete, man, like if you're not sleeping and you're going to try to perform high, and I don't like, we have a saying in Australia, I'm not here to fuck spiders. I like to perform at a very high level. And so everything I do in life.
Using that saying. I don't know when and how to use it in context, but
I'm
just going to bust it out.
I'm going to help you.
Fuck spiders.
You're going to say, I'm not here to fuck spiders.
Oh, I'm not here to fuck spiders.
That's
okay.
right. Which means you're here to get it done.
Okay.
You're not here to muck around. You're not here to mess around.
No farting
you're here to
around.
be lazy. You're here to get it done.
Yeah.
And so I like to perform high, and I've got to gauge that. I've got to pull that back. But what my point in that is that I'm being open in really new ways. And that's what new profound experiences that are meaningful to us will do. And so, back to the parents' question, yes, yes, and yes, and it's revealing new things now. And surprisingly, more with my mama. And, like when I see her this year, I'm going to try and bring her over to the US. I'll sit with her and we'll hold hands and we'll talk and we'll go deeper into that. And it's still my job, or it's my duty, or it's my, sovereign responsibility. If I have judgments towards someone, it's not their responsibility to, take them away from me or do so. I've got to be responsible for that.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Mike. I'm popping in here to tell you about my absolute favorite soul product, our Alert Focus Caps. If you're dealing with any morning fatigue, brain fog, or just relying on coffee throughout the day to get you by, I got you. This is a doctor-formulated product that's been proven to increase focus, energy, and concentration with our proprietary blend of a handful of adaptogens, nootropics, and plant extracts. Some of the ingredients we use are lion's mane, mushrooms with neuroprotective effects that reduce brain fog and improve memory. We've got B12 in there, a brain-boosting vitamin that can improve mental clarity, increase energy, and boost mood. We've got all-natural caffeine from green tea extract with CBD to stop any jitters. And finally, one of my favorites, we've got a phenomenal blend of cordyceps in there. This is a powerhouse mushroom that's gaining popularity day over day because it increases oxygen uptake in the brain and increases blood flow to the brain, which will help you fight mental fatigue. You're going to feel alert and dialed in without the jitters, I promise you. You got to go try this out. And exclusive to our Best Medicine podcast listeners, we're offering a 20% off code on Alert and all sold products. So just use code TBM and make sure to let us know what you think. We've got over 6,000 5-star reviews now, and I'm so proud, and I stand by the quality and efficacy of our products. So go use code TBM at mysoulcbd.com and enjoy.
Were you completely ready and excited to have a kid? Or was it one of those things where now once it happens, most beautiful thing ever, but, and I say this selfishly, is I'm not ready for kids. And because I always see that as, I want to accomplish more, I want to travel more, I want to do more. I see it as it limits my freedom, which as I sit here now, I know that's not entirely true, but I know for a lot of guys, that's how they feel. So now, you know, you're 40 years old, you have this beautiful daughter. Were you honestly like, yes, let's do it, kid, we want a kid? Or it just kind of, once it happened, it sprung on you and now you just feel like it's the most incredible thing of your life?
It was very planned.
Okay.
It was very deliberately planned, and we waited in the sense that where we both, particularly Christine, felt really open and ready, and so we prepared for it. And when we said, okay, we're ready, I mean, literally got pregnant the first cycle. Like it was just, it was very, very blessed, right? Very blessed. Yeah. So okay, we're ready. Boom, we're in, right? The dialogue that I had with my wife was, and I'm going to come back to the freedom piece in a second, it's very important, is I think that we would regret not having children if we didn't, more than if we did, in terms of like what it pulls from us. And you got to remember, we're older. When you're younger, when you're in your 20s or in your 30s, and whenever you have children, it comes with challenges, right? But when you're older, you're more established in your identity, you're more established in your routines and patterns. You know, like old dogs can't teach them new tricks. You know that saying?
Sure.
It's very, as we get older, it becomes more challenging, generally speaking, to change our behaviors and habits, right? So that's been a big shock. It's been the most challenging time of our lives, and it's been the most blessed time of our lives. And the freedom piece, you're not wrong, man. You're not wrong in saying, I don't want my freedom taken from me. And you're not wrong in saying, I know that's not entirely true. And entirely is the key word there. Because it's not entirely true, but it's true. Because things are going to change. Like, unless you don't want to be a present father, then why are you having children, right? You don't want to be a present parent. Things have to change in your life. So if you're not ready for that, then can you be completely ready? I don't think so. I don't even think if you're on your third or fourth child, you can be completely ready. You can be readier, but can you be completely ready? I don't even know if that exists.
But I think that's what's so different about men and women, at least chemically, is that like that feeling that you just described and that emotion you just had about your daughter, I can't viscerally feel that. And I'm sure a year ago, you wouldn't have even known that feeling existed.
Accurate.
Yeah. You don't know the love till you feel the love.
Right.
Very
it's
accurate.
like such a leap of faith to be like, I'm going to do this thing that is so incredible, so huge, so permanent, going to limit freedom, but I don't even know what that's going to feel like on the other side.
You won't. I had a friend of mine who lives here. He's got 6 kids, right? Very well accomplished in his career path.
Holy shit.
Just had his 6th kid recently.
No, dude, if they outnumber you, I think it's
so like, all right. So
he's cool.
He's a little crazy. All right.
Multiple dogs. Anyway,
wow.
Lots of animals.
Bless him.
Yes, and again, very very successful in his career. So you know, has achieved a lot. I purposely mentioned that 6 kids. He said, "You will never know I can't." And he's very articulate. I cannot articulate in words what it is to, this is just before we had our baby, what it is to have a child. You're going to know when you hold that child for the first time, when you see your wife go through that process. It doesn't matter how well I explain it to you, you're just not going to get it. And he is very right. He's very correct in that.
It's like explaining to a middle schooler what love, like your love is like, right? It's like you're a middle schooler. They don't know what it's like to have your heart like broken or open up so big. It's almost like, I assume it's inexplicable. It's like it's meant to be so inexplicable, because for him to put it into words and you get it, like, would take away the magicalness of it. What was that like without, sharing? Obviously that's Christine's, privacy and her whole story, but from your perspective a little bit as a man. Christine is awesome. Obviously one of my favorite people. She had a home birth, and what was it like as a man to like a little bit of being on that side of it? Was it like, oh my gosh, she's a warrior?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you have a
and the
nurse
rest.
there, right? Or how
No,
does that
Mike
work?
is just a
mean-
pizza delivery guy.
I mean,
He
do you
called
like-
Domino's Pizza, and the guy came and he said, hey, you help her out.
The home birth is fascinating to me, man. It's
Christine did it.
Isn't that interesting though? That
I heard it
that's
was crazy. So
It was crazy. That was fascinating because that's how it was done.
well, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how it's been done for
Yeah.
99.99999% of our existence, right? Collective existence. So again, without going into, because it is more her story per se, not per se, it is, the baby exited her, not me. It was one of the most profound things that I witnessed. And there's so much I want to say to it, but I want to keep that. I think actually she did share on her podcast. Yeah, very, very recently, like last week or
she
the
shared
week
it?
before. Yeah.
Oh, I
I'm
can't
pretty
wait to hear.
Yeah. But I never knew a human being. Like I thought I was pretty tough. But I mean, I think I'm pretty tough in
let's
certain
see.
ways.
You and Mike fight right now. We'll find
that
out.
doesn't
Just
count.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
If I have a gun or something, maybe that doesn't
I'm
count.
just
No, I
I'm
hope
the
that he's
ref.
a bit rusty or something.
Yeah, oh, I am.
Yeah.
Trust me. Now's the time. If you wanted to get me, now is the time.
Get him now. It was a new level of resilience, toughness, focus. Not once did she complain.
What?
Not one, and I'm not exaggerating. Not once did she say, is it close? Not once did she say, is this going to end soon, or give me medicine, all natural. Just not once. And even in times where it was getting sketchy because it was quite long.
Sketchy.
Yeah, it's getting sketchy. It was
Sketchy.
quite long.
This is getting sketch, babe.
Not-
we need to
not
hold
once.
the brake.
Not once. Like just it was
Wow.
another level of mental resilience and toughness and emotional, spiritual resilience I'd never witnessed before.
And you'd never seen her like that. You thought you knew her, and then you see a side of her that you're like, whoa.
I've never seen any human being in person like that. What she did, particularly, and again, I'm just withholding certain information to just protect the sanctity of her process and her experience and our process and experience. But the last few hours, what she did was literally not human. And you'd understand if I was to explain what happened, but it was literally the midwives said we've never seen that before, and collectively they'd been doing this for 30 years. They'd never seen it before. They didn't realize it was even possible.
Wow. That's so cool to hear the guy's perspective, just to hear the reverence for it. Because
Such
it
deep
is
reverence.
such a cool thing. And so many women now are here doing it at home. And I think I would love to, but I also think an epidural sounds real nice. So I'm kind of like in the middle, But I mean, just hearing how she did it, it's so empowering because it's like, whoa, like to be the creature that gets to do that and to know that you have the power to do that is pretty freaking cool. I'm curious going on the freedom thing with men. I feel like a lot of dudes listening, this is the juice. This is the sauce. Let's get real. How do men and women, let's be honest, women want freedom as well, but how do you honor and have freedom, but then you're also still married and you're in these committed unions or these relationships? It's like, do you find that it just shifts, or it's still both people finding their own passions and hobbies? Like, what does it tangibly look like for people to still honor freedom, yet they've chosen to also, AK, how can dudes still feel free?
Yeah, in a relationship.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It's a great question. Yeah.
I mean, it's real talk. It's real.
You've got to define freedom for yourself first. So as a man or as just a human being, you've got to get really clear on what freedom means to you. So let's just use an example. We were speaking to what's happened and transpired the last couple of years. So in Australia, for example, they were one of the most extreme countries in terms of their lockdowns and in terms of the way they collectively as a nation dealt with the pandemic, right? And so I can't speak for 23 million people, but I can speak for some people that I have been in close contact with and I know their perspectives. They didn't see it as an encroachment on their freedom. Now, I guarantee you,
Wow.
the vast majority of people in our community, because we live in echo chambers, let's be real, the majority of people in our communities would go, whoa, what do you mean that's not an encroachment on freedom? Yes, it is. So every individual needs to define what freedom looks like for them. Now, in context of intimate relating, what you're essentially speaking to is variety and novelty, right? At some level. And also the choice to do what I want, when I want, how I want. So at some level, I don't want to use the word sacrifice. Well, let's use the word sacrifice just for the sake of using it. You sacrifice what you were when you're in singledom, because you have less people by default to answer to. Just look at it as mathematics, right? Like you had 0 people to answer to, now you've got 1 person to answer to. So just by that alone, when I say answer to or responsible for or consider, that's the choice you make when you come into a relationship. Now, depending on the type of relationship you want, you may see that all the pros of that particular relationship, or just being in a relationship in general, outweigh that particular encroachment, right? With respect to having sex with multiple partners, I mean, you can still be in an emotionally monogamous relationship and you can have sex with multiple people if you desire and your other
We're in
partner
Austin,
desires.
Texas, y'all.
I mean,
Mike's like, we've had this convo in Austin now a few times here with people.
you can dress it up how you want.
It's like just such a chill thing to say here in Austin, I feel like.
Are you
But in
talking about
most cities, people are like, what are you talking about?
Essentially polyamory is what you're talking about.
Yeah, non-monogamous relationship. Yeah. However you want to dress. But there are variations of that, just like there are variations of monogamy. But then there are more fundamental views or fundamentalist views of anything, whether it's a relationship dynamic or political dogma or doctrine or religious dogma or whatever it is. And we have to choose what relationship containers we want to be in and what that looks like. And that requires conversations, like honest conversations with our partners or potential partners. Now, most people are just afraid to have honest conversations, right? Now, what I would say, I was going to say the word argue, but it's not really arguing because I'm not arguing it. I'm just saying what I would say is that most people feel a contraction in freedom, not from the circumstances that they're in, but from the truth that they're hiding, from the truth that they're not speaking in that relationship. So, for example, what you really want is to be able to flirt with other people. Let's just say you want to flirt with other people, but you know that your partner has a proclivity or they have an issue with that. So instead of actually being honest and truthful, you just hide it or you do it in the shadows. There's an instant retraction there. There's instant, my freedom is taken from me. So I'm either going to suppress it and eventually build resentment and anger and have leaky energy and leaky behavior and leaky anger, or I'm just going to do it, right? And I'm not going to tell anyone, which cultivates a persona and masks that we wear and layer, which doesn't help the relationship either. So I think the freedom comes more from, when we're very deliberate in making our choices of what we want, we don't necessarily feel less freedom. The risk is when we say to our partners, hey, I want to flirt and this is what I'd really like to do. I want to respect the sanctity of the container, but it's something that I need. How do you feel about that? And you may say, you can respond a myriad of ways, right? But here's the thing. We seldom have those conversations because we're fucking scared of the response. We're scared of rejection, humiliation, judgment, abandonment, all our core wounds that we haven't addressed, that we experienced growing up during our developmental years are still stuck with us, and they amplify the present moment. They amplify having or not having honest conversations. And that's one of the biggest problems when we're talking about freedom. When we're specifically referring to men, or really what we're saying is the masculine energetic, right? And let's just clear something up really quickly. From my perspective, masculine feminine dynamics, they reside, they're energetic streams of being and doing, literally masculine doing, feminine being. Michaela Boehm says go and flow energies, do and be energies. Active, you can say active, passive, yang, yin, they're just two sides of the same coin, two wings of the same bird. That we create duality in order to realize that these qualities exist within human beings, and we create duality for a rich learning experience. And in a rich learning experience, through contrast, we're able to come into this, oh, I feel more whole now within myself. So masculine and feminine is not attached to gender, biological gender. It's just a way of explaining duality, different ways of being and doing in the world, right? And so when we're talking about masculine people that crave freedom, because most masculine orientated individuals will really crave freedom. Most feminine orientated individuals, and there are more layers to this, by the way, but this is just one example, they crave intimacy. Now, as a man, I crave intimacy. So that's my feminine coming through me. Connection, I crave connection. That's my feminine coming through me, right? As a man, I also crave freedom. That's my masculine coming through me, right? So we're talking about freedom. We're talking about most of the time people not being honest with themselves and not being honest with the people that they care for. And that's a greater encroachment on freedom than the circumstances that they find themselves in. Because here's the thing, just don't be in a relationship. But what do you like about a relationship? You like the fact that there's someone there for you when you need it. Can a friend fill that void or fill that gap? Do you like having sex? Can you have casual, non-attached sex? Like, what is it? What, if we're designing our life, but like by design, orchestrating our lives, what does it look like for us? But we're conditioned by society, we're conditioned by our upbringing and our family values, and we don't question anything. This is an encroachment on freedom. When we don't question anything, we're not curious about what could life look like in different ways. These are questions that we need to ask about getting really curious about what we truly desire.
Wow.
I love that
good,
because I
that's
think you're
good.
having honest, open conversations. And because one of my questions is always in terms of, and you touched on it with societal pressures, is like right now the divorce rate is like what? I don't know. Is it 58% or it's crazy. It's more than,
I think it's high.
is it higher? It's
Potentially.
way more than half, right?
Yeah, it's definitely more than half that I'm aware of.
I mean, that's such a broad, huge question of why is that? But I kind of want to ask you that in terms of like, what do you feel like is one of the main reasons for that? And if you are married, one of the things that you can do to not become one of those statistics, because as a kid of divorce and a painful divorce, I don't want to do that. I really don't. And so I kind of sit here being like, how do I not recreate that pain that I already had? And I know that's obviously a broad, complicated question, but you must see a lot of patterns.
Yeah. Can I ask you a personal question?
Sure.
So this is a point of reflection. You don't even have to answer it, just a point of question, reflection, right? How much of you do you think holds back in relationship because you are very clear you don't want a divorce?
I'll answer a good amount. I think I have a tendency to get to a point in a relationship where it gets very serious, where it could work towards that. And I think that wound of not wanting to repeat, so a good amount.
Yeah. And so thank you for answering that. I appreciate your honesty. And so that leads into somewhat answering your question of why is it that there are so many separations or divorces, right? I did a post a while ago, and the post was something to this effect: the wounded masculine leaves too early and the wounded feminine stays too long, right? Let me elaborate. It actually it connects back to freedom and connection. The wounded masculine, who isn't really in harmony with himself, the moment that he feels threatened in relationship, his freedom is threatened because he hasn't got a healthy relationship with himself and his freedom. So he's out too early. And I'll define too early in a moment as well, because that's going to actually come deeper into your question around divorce and separation. The wounded feminine who craves connection, I can change him. I can make it work. I can make this work. I can change myself. I'm going to just stick around. I'm going to stick around. Stays too long. Expiry date's gone. Doesn't value herself. No self-worth. The issue we have is that we don't know ourselves because we don't explore ourselves. And so we get into a relationship, we get into marriage, right? It's the first part. We get into union, whatever the commitment looks like, right? And we don't know who we are. We don't know what we truly want. And therefore, we can't hold the big energy of others. We can't prioritize their nervous systems. As a friend, if you come to me and you're really angry about something, right? And I start taking that personally, and all of a sudden, I'm like, hey, fuck you and your anger, don't bring it here, whatever. Like, however I react to you, I'm not nurturing your nervous. You didn't come to me angry at me, even if you were angry at me, right? But that complicates things a little bit. Look, you didn't come angry at me. You just came having big feelings. If I don't prioritize your nervous system, I'm not doing you a service. I'm not helping you actually receive. Because maybe in the past when you did that, maybe with a parent, they either completely ignored you or shut you down, or they melancholied you or whatever it was, they wrapped you up. And that's not helpful. But if I just sit there and I hear you and I love you through that with empathy and compassion, I'm helping you heal an old pattern. And in the same context, I'm actually healing something within myself as well. Because usually with friendships and intimate relationships, we have complementary wounds, right? So if we go back to that intimate relationship example, we don't know ourselves. We're not willing to hold for our partners. And the moment it gets difficult, instead of sticking around and observing, not being the victim, why is this happening to me? But saying, what's in this for me? Like, how can we grow together here? And hey, maybe you do some inner work around that pattern that keeps coming up, that you're reactive with each other, or that you scream at each other, or that you don't respect each other's space, or whatever, or he's going out too much, or she's working too much, or whatever it may be. And you, instead of breaking up immediately, do some inner work around that together. Like, explore what is that, what's in this for us. And then after sound exploration, you know what, maybe we do need to break up. But I would say, and this is anecdotal, right? I would say that if most couples actually worked on the issues, and maybe it is as simple as just going to counseling and therapy, just getting another perspective, right? But actually committed to their work, and they were willing to grow together and grow. And not just, and here's another reason, right? The convenience of the honeymoon period or the limerence phase. We're addicted to that. So the moment the honeymoon period is over and we start seeing the whole version of that person and the real version of that person, not just the convenient parts, not the best foot forward, not just the lipstick and the nice hair and this and that, whatever it is, right? Like, well, can we love all of that person? Because unconsciously they're feeling, well, you love me when I put my best foot forward, but what about when I get upset or angry or when I get messy? You can't hold that. And so we just, it's convenient to let the relationship go. It's convenient to divorce. It's convenient to separate. It's convenient to start over with someone new and pretend none of it ever happened. But guess what? You fucking bring yourself wherever you go. And that's the truth. So unless we change who we are, we're going to bring that old version into a new relationship. End of story.
You bring yourself wherever you go.
You bring
I love
yourself
that.
wherever you go, Michael.
And I didn't come to fuck spiders.
That's exactly right.
Those are
That's
my
my
two
point.
big takeaways.
Biggest
That was
takeaways.
good. Wow. Holy shit. Wait, I have a juicy question
Okay, go
too.
ahead.
You
Oh,
have
you-
yours? All right, we
No.
both have a juicy question. I feel like what's going on, this is also like very cancelable, but I don't care. I feel like, I just don't care anymore. I feel like what's going on is called, what me and a few women are calling like toxic femininity, right? Let's use that term. So the feminist
Here we
movement
go.
went too far. It went too
No, I'm
far,
just kidding.
right? We're all like, women, we can also work. We can also. And then you've got these girls who are like, well, I'll pay, but I want to pay then. It's like, cool, Brenda, you be that feminist and then you let the dudes pay. So it went too far, right? Then we can, that's history, the 60s, what happened, Men went to the war, women had to step up and work, all of that. But it's interesting that now I think the pendulum went too far. And now we have these women who are like in their super masculine and they're, I'm a hashtag lady boss making 10 figures, but they're in the proving energy.
10 figures. Oh, that'd be nice.
I know, right? They're like, I don't know, whatever the shit I see on Instagram and TikTok. Like, ladies, click below to figure out how to make 13 figures and retire your husband. And I'm like, bleh, and I just keep scrolling.
13 figures.
I know. And so it just has gotten too far where women almost overcompensated to prove that we are just as smart and as capable as men, when actually I think it went too far. And then we're neglecting our true femininity, which actually does want to be supported and does want to be able to receive and lean back. And we don't want to fucking pay for the dates. And I don't care if dudes make more. Like, I don't want to be the breadwinner, So it's interesting that I think it went too far with women. And now we have these women who are in their masculine. And I know them because I'm friends with a lot of them and they're tired. So what happened?
Oh, I think you
Did I nail it? I don't know.
you spoke to a little bit about what
Yeah, like
happened, yeah.
it's
terms of
almost
the
like these
pendulum
women are too
swinging.
afraid to say something though. They'll say, I'm too afraid to like stop. I'm too afraid to, because what will the society think of me if I don't also be this lady boss? But they don't want to be. And so it's like, it's weird. It's a weird time in the world. Because now dudes are dating dudes in a sense, right? When they're not like, it's just gotten messy.
It is a
Cancel me. Go ahead, people.
No, don't cancel Angie. Do not cancel Angie. Hashtag do not cancel Angie. It is a strange time. And so what you'll find is often what's underneath that masculine energetic, that need to accomplish, that need to prove, that need to attain, that need to contribute, in a very, very big way, that need to direct and lead and be a boss and be in greater autonomy and even control. What's usually underneath that, by the way, for both men and women, in the extremities of that, right? So in the extremities of, goal-orientated thinking that is obsessive, for any human being, what's underneath that is a fear of losing control.
Security.
Insecurity, that's right. Yeah. And that usually stems from, again, just not always, but childhood and adolescent lifetime experiences. And so we form ideas and beliefs of who we are and what we need to feel safe. And so, for example, that female, maybe this is an example, right? Maybe her father wasn't around and left, and mum they didn't have a great relationship, and mum said, you can never trust men. You've got to do things for yourself. You just have to. So she wears, that little girl wears this big mask of, I'm going to do everything by myself. But then she becomes a teenager and hormones start moving through her body, and she starts maybe becoming attracted to the opposite sex. And now she wants to be maybe quote unquote more in her feminine. So she puts another mask on that's unfamiliar to her. It's familiar, but it's unfamiliar. But then maybe she's hurt by a boy or a teen during her teenage experiences. So see, mum said, I can never trust boys. Bang, another mask goes on. Society says, hey, if you want to be valued, you've got to do this, this, and this. You've got to do. You've got to do, doing energy. You've got to produce. You've got to create. And it's not enough that you fucking give birth to a human life. You've got to create business. You've got to do that's one of the reasons why men, whether we like it or not, there's a part of our male psyche that is threatened by the female body, by what you can do.
Wow.
Like what you can create, what you can birth. That's why
I didn't know that.
so many amazing ideas and so much of social, economic, geopolitical evolution comes from men. It's a way to compensate. And it's a way to create as well. And there's no judgment in that, by the way, but it's just, but people get very fucking offended when, oh, no, that's not the fucking case. Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. Just look at it. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right. But
yeah, it is tough.
Where's it coming from, right? I'm being a little facetious. But you can see, so underneath all of that, and I get a lot of women, many women throughout the years that I've been doing this, and Christine too, we coach and we teach together and programs together. Many women that come and say, I'm tired of leading. I'm tired of doing so much. I'm tired of attracting men that are either hyper controlling and hyper masculine or just really passive and they just follow and they don't take lead. And I want to stop doing so much. That is definitely a common theme that I receive. And underneath that, there is some fear. There's some fear of losing self or not knowing who self truly is or not being able to trust. And so I don't want to judge these women. I don't want to judge people that are coming from a place because I feel their pain. I've helped people work through their pain in that sense. I've worked through my own masks as well. So I get that. And I think you're accurate. And I can't speak for every woman, Angie, that is actually, pursuing, and again, nothing wrong with pursuing a career, right? Just what's the come from? Like what's really underneath your need to do that? That's all. Just answer that for yourself. Don't answer it for me. You don't need to care what I think. But where's it coming from for you?
Like, is it creativity and passion or is it proving? Yeah. To keep up with the boys and to show my dad or to show people, insert in whatever I can be successful, which gets real old real fast.
Yeah. And it gets old for all of us. I mean,
right? I guess
for me too.
Men who are in just the proving. That's
Big time.
I feel like that's the word that comes through. It's just proving.
Yes. And seeking approval and seeking validation. And for me, that stemmed from, I just want my dad to love me. I just want my dad to be good to me. I just want my dad to see me and appreciate me. And the interesting thing is, as a teenager and as an adult, my dad would be very critical, but again, part of the volatility and the confusion, right? That's why I have a disorganized attachment style, or had a disorganized attachment style growing up. But I recall him being very approving of me, but it was never enough because all the disapproval that I experienced growing up, it dominated my thought process and it dominated my energy. So even when he did say, well done, son, that was great, you did great, I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
I didn't receive it.
But that moment that you referenced earlier about sitting next to him, and I think you were in Greece at the time.
No, we weren't in Greece at the time. I remember exactly. We were at a cafe in Fremantle back in Australia where I was from.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that moment, you had mentioned there's nothing that came back. And my first thought was like, well, that's almost like talking to a brick wall,
yes,
which I'm sure a lot of people relate with. But yet you found forgiveness and you found not strength, but healing rather from that, even though you didn't get an I'm sorry.
Yeah. Because I had forgiven him well before that moment.
Okay, so it wasn't about what was coming back. It was already, but then why even say it? Just to get it off your chest?
Doing it for yourself. Right?
If you had already...
not even. Just to go through the process and of hey, he's alive, so why not have an interesting conversation and see where it goes?
Sure.
Curiosity was the reason.
Okay.
Curiosity. I expected him to not acknowledge it.
Okay.
I expected that. In some way, I expected him to not acknowledge it in whatever his way was.
So you kind of came into it, whether this goes south, there's no answer, any scenario here.
Yeah, there is no south.
I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
It's Powerful. We got to heal our parent shit before we become parents.
And that's a very, very powerful statement.
It's
And I'd
real.
even go one further, is it's very useful to be aware of our relationships to our parents prior to entering in meaningful, intimate, long-term relationships as well, romantic sexual partnerships, because they are often reflections of what we did and did not receive, both consciously and unconsciously, from our parents. And that's not my saying, that's Harville Hendrix, who's an amazing author and has been around for, I would say, 50 plus years in the relationship world, he and his wife. And that has rung very true for what I have witnessed in the many thousands of people that I've worked with as well. And so I think really healing that, or being aware of it, at least, like coming into a relationship and being aware of it. I've got a post coming out this week or next week, whenever my team puts it out. But the post is 5 key questions to ask on the first date. And one,
like that.
yeah,
Ooh, what are they?
and yeah, well, one of them is tell me your relationship with your parents. Like, does that person have awareness? Do you have awareness of yours? Because it's tremendous insight into what triggers you, what activates you, where things are going to get slippery, where you're both going to maybe butt heads, where challenges are going to be. And I'm not asking everyone to be their own psychotherapist. I'm just asking everyone to be aware of themselves. Like, who wants to learn trigonometry and calculus unless you want to be a mathematician? Like, why do we teach that at school? Like, why don't we teach like how to be with oneself, like how to be with one's thoughts, how to work through challenge, how to cultivate mental toughness, how to cultivate emotional intelligence, and how to interact with people, how to manage conflict. Like, why don't we teach that?
I know, right? Like how to live with another human. Like,
Yeah, how to cook.
They didn't tell us that was going to happen and
Yeah.
have its difficulties, but instead I'm in home ec learning how to sew. I'm like, I don't need to learn how to fucking sew. I need to learn how to not kill this person that I'm living with. Right?
I know where I'm going when I need something sewed. My button's off. Sew it now, please.
Right? They're teaching me sewing. I don't need to know how to sew right now. I need to learn other shit.
One of the questions we've been asking every single guest, and it's been cool because we've gotten so many different answers, is the title of the show. When you hear the best medicine, what is maybe the first thing that comes to mind, or for you in your life in particular? And it's obviously a broad saying, but for you personally, Stefanos, what is the best medicine in your life?
The first thing that I think of when I hear the term or the title show, best medicine, I think of the Best Western.
The Best Western?
The hotel chain.
The hotel chain.
The motel chain, maybe.
Oh, the
Interesting.
3-star
Yeah,
hotel.
no, yeah,
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
We
Shout
got
out
we
Best-
got to.
Actually, that reminds us. Thank you to our sponsors, Best Western.
No,
Yeah.
it's actually a really good title. Well, it really is. The best medicine. What I think of is, I'm going to. We've been speaking about relationships. I play and delve in deep into the realm of relationships. So I'm going to say that the best medicine, and this is broad and purposely, is relationships, right? And the reason why I say that, and let me give you some very different examples as well. So personally for me, there have been many times in my life, and even now, and I shared this with Christine the other day, that in when I'm feeling really high and elated, and even when I'm particularly when I'm really down, I have had moments of, I just need to escape. Let me just go. This is the masculine and the freedom, right? Let me just go to the top of the mountain and meditate and be with God and not worry about the world and not worry about all the complexities, and let me just be by myself in nature, in a mountain. I don't want anyone to be around me. Now, that's part coming from wound, part coming, there's a deep yearning and desire to be in that space, right? But the relationship to our thoughts, the relationship to that experience, the relationship to our partners, the relationship to our children, the relationship to our pain, the relationship to our trauma, the relationship to our ambitions and our passions and our inspirations, and the relationship to everything we have in life, because we live in a realm of duality, in a world of duality, that we are related to anything that we are connected to, either mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. And so the best medicine for me is finding refuge in relationship, particularly intimate relationships, particularly romantic partnerships, because they're so potent, they're so activating, they're so triggering and painful and so beautiful. Like what can you experience? Like what places can you go within the infinite realm of consciousness? And even, I think that's almost an oxymoron to say within the infinite, within meaning that there's something outside. But like, I don't know what the other words would be, but within the infinite realm of transcending mediocrity. Like, relationships have the capacity to do that. And so if we sit with relationships and we sit with what they're there to teach us and show us, And if we sit with if we sit long enough with being willing to traverse the difficulties and the challenges that come with relationship in healthy ways, not in addicted, codependent ways, right? But in healthy ways, I mean, that's fucking medicine, man. To me, that's just as impactful as a deep breathwork session, just as impactful as ayahuasca, just as impactful as anything you can do on this planet. Like I think Ram Dass said this: if you want to be enlightened, go back home and spend a week with your family or something, right? Relationships, medicine.
Yeah.
Man, he did a lot of LSD.
Yeah.
And he spent he spent a lot of time with yogis as well. So I definitely revere him as a being and as a teacher. So I would say relationships.
You're obviously incredibly passionate about this, the work you do. What's coming up for you? What's next? What are you like excited about? Obviously, you're a new dad. That's incredible. But what else are you kind of looking forward to here coming up for you?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about having, on a personal front, having my brother come over. My father's he's had cancer a couple of times. It's hard for him to travel. So, and he's 81. So hard for him to travel. So I'll go to Greece. We'll go to Greece next year. So I'm excited about that. But I'm excited to bring my mum and my brother over. My brother lives in Australia with his family. I haven't even seen my little niece yet. I'm just I reckon when I see my brother, we're very close. I'm going to hug him and I'm probably just going to wail like a fucking baby and not let him go. Oh, man, I miss him. It's been a couple of years, So I'm really looking forward to that. And just every day, man, like I ache for my little girl now. I'm just thinking about her rolling around. She's learning to crawl now. She's such a little menace. She's so curious.
She looks like you.
So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about her. I'm excited about, Christine and I connecting in deeper ways as well. As a result of obviously our child, but just as a result of us focusing just a little more on us, that's been neglected a little bit. And that's very natural when you have a child. But we come back to center point. And I'm very excited about, which I believe you're coming to on Tuesday. Very excited about breathwork for the feminine, which is something that I'll be doing every month here in Austin, but also around the US is my intention. So next year I'll be bringing it to other cities as well, which is a 3 to 4 hour immersive for women only. Breathwork is a big part of that. Somatic release is a big part of that, and other really powerful exercises, that experiential exercise that we engage in. But it really centers around relationships, dating, helping women understand men from a man's perspective.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Healing that collective masculine wound. And it's just a bunch of beautiful women coming together and breathing. And that's going to be available virtually live. I'm going to live stream that as well, November 7th. So that'll be at VUCA in November 7th, and 27th of September, which is next week, will be at Flow Yoga. So yeah, I'm just really, really excited about that. And I'm excited about the work that I do in the world, and the creation process. It's still very alive in me more than ever. I've been like that for many, many years. It's me birthing my children into the world, I guess. The best way that I can is the way I think, and then just express that. Yeah.
I'm so grateful you came in. This was a really awesome convo. Make sure to go check out Stefanos on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
Stefanos Sifandos, and my website, stefanosifandos.com.
Awesome.
You're the
We'll definitely
best.
put it in show notes. But we were saying before we started that you've got awesome content on there, easy, quick, relatable stuff, and a lot of things that I think people can see themselves in. So definitely go check that out.
Oh, and those photos. Who draws those? Do you know that I thought that was you for a while, drawing the sexual
I wish I
photos?
was that good.
I was always like, wow, he's just in the room at night just drawing these pictures of people having sex and stuff. I didn't know he was also an artist. And then Clay's like, dude, no, it's probably an artist that he's having make them. I'm like, oh, I thought it was him just sitting there.
No.
Who
I'd be
makes
very
those?
talented because the different styles that are on there.
I know.
Whoever, I tag them in the.
They're cool. They're funky. I'm
my
scrolling. I'm
sister
like,
tags them.
whoa, oh my God, whoa. 6 a.m.
Well,
Oh,
that's
shit.
that's the purpose, though, right?
Yeah.
So when this is interesting that you say that.
Yeah.
If I can
They're
say
a little
one thing.
scandalous,
Please do.
okay?
Yeah.
Warning.
But that's it's not clickbait, but people think, oh, it's about sex. Not really. That's secondary. It's everything we spoke to here.
Oh,
it's
shit.
about doing the shadow work. It's about loving your partner, all of who they are, not just the convenient parts. It's about doing your own inner work. It's about seeing each other. It's about staying with each other when the seas get really, really rough, right? It's about nurturing your partner's nervous system. That's what these posts are about. Now, the images are very provocative and evocative, And sex and sexual penetration, sexual interaction, and the act of sexuality is part of that. But it's a very small part, actually.
Yeah. No,
It's
the
an
captions
extension of.
are great. You got to also read the captions, y'all. Okay, don't just click on the photo and say, "Oh wow, I didn't know he drew that today." First of all, it's not him. Second
not
of
me.
all, read the caption. Okay. So good, so fun. Oh, you're the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.